Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We got a lot to talk about. This is a fast-moving hurricane, and that's part of the problem. This storm made landfall as a rapidly intensifying hurricane, spiked up to 110-mile-an-hour winds, and it's moving inland so quickly that by tomorrow morning, we're talking less than 12 hours, it's going to be in the western Carolinas. And when storms move that quickly, they don't wind down as quickly. You got to remember, hurricanes feed off of warm water, and when they get away from that warm water, they weaken from the bottom to the top. So if you're moving very quickly, that weakening trend takes longer, especially in the low levels. And then think about this. This is also going up in elevation. So as it gets closer to the Carolinas, we go from sea level to maybe 700 feet in Charlotte, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet in the mountains. So the winds up those elevations stay elevated for a long period of time. So let's get right to it. We'll go full screen here. This is a look at the storm, and you can see it is flying. I mean, it's still got some ragged looking eye in southern Mississippi. Winds are technically still around 90 miles per hour, and we're well inland. So in fact, let me show you the updated track here. I'm going to load it up. It's going to take a second. This is the 9 p.m. advisory. We're getting hourly updates. Now that the storm is inland and over radar, we can get hourly updates. So you can see 90 miles per hour. But here's the key stat on here. You can see it right at the top. Look at that forward motion, north-northeast at 25 miles per hour. This could actually pick up speed and move closer to 30 to 35 miles per hour overnight. So it is going to be flying over time. Here's the track. You can see how quickly it moves. By 2 a.m. it's going to be over Montgomery, Alabama, south of Birmingham with 65-mile-an-hour winds. And then it moves right over Atlanta, Georgia. And then it moves right over Asheville and into western North Carolina tomorrow morning, so that by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, it's over central Virginia. So think about that speed there for a second. I mean, that is absolutely hauling. And that forward motion is a big part of the problem because we anticipate there being some really strong winds along the track. And I've shown this graphic quite a bit, but this is something that we've seen go up quite a bit in the last 12 hours or so. This is the probability of seeing tropical storm force winds. Now, tropical storm force winds are technically 39 miles per hour, so we round up to 40, but these are sustained chances. So we're not talking gusts. This is the chance of seeing sustained winds for any period of time close to 40 miles an hour. That's pretty substantial. When you see 73% in Asheville, 66% there in Morganton, and again, those strong winds would be carried all the way up into parts of Virginia. So you're looking at the potential of some really strong winds well inland. Sorry about that. I don't know why that popped off there so quickly. I'll play that again real quickly so you can see how that progresses. I wanted to widen it out because you can see those strong winds extend up into Virginia and down towards Atlanta. You know, you're talking like 100% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. So for that reason, we do have a rare tropical storm warning for most of our area. Now, these were not issued up until about 2006, so people are asking, when's the last time that's happened? Well, we've only had 2 of these technically in this area. And the first one was back in 2018 when Hurricane Michael came barreling into the panhandle of Florida and then raced up here. It was a Category 5, so the winds were strong as well. We had some of our counties under a tropical storm warning. But if you're thinking about Hugo and other storms in the 80s or 90s, there technically wasn't this product inland. This was only issued for the coast. A lot of those storms changed how we did things. We used to have inland wind warnings at one point. High wind warnings were another thing. We didn't use tropical storm warnings. So they just kept it all the same. So if you got tropical storm force conditions inland or at the coast, doesn't matter. We've got tropical storm warning. So it is kind of rare to see that happen inland. Michael was the last time it happened back in 2018. So what do you need to know? I want to summarize all this for people that don't want to watch the entire video, but worse weather is going to be in the morning tomorrow. 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. So there's a 6-hour window there. I think we'll see the worst weather. And for some of us, that window is even smaller, but that kind of gets the whole viewing area. Strong winds everywhere. This is the one thing I can tell you. Everybody will see strong winds at some point overnight or early tomorrow morning. 2 to 4 inches of rain in the mountains with localized 5 inches. That's where our flood threat is. Lower rain for the Piedmont East, maybe just an inch or less. An isolated tornado threat. But the wind thing is very important because if you're watching this right now, one thing I want you to do tonight is make sure you charge up all your devices because potentially we are going to see trees come down tomorrow. When you get a couple hours of strong winds over saturated soil, we typically see trees come down, power lines come down, limbs come down. So I do think we're going to see widespread power outages, especially in the western part of the state and anywhere we have a lot of trees and elevated power lines. Now, I say that because in some areas of Charlotte and other bigger cities, a lot of the lines have begun to be buried quite a bit. But where you have a lot of above ground lines and a lot of trees, which most of the Western Carolinas does, we're going to see a lot of power outages. And that doesn't even count the feeder lines coming in to some of these cities. So just a heads up, if you have a computer, iPad, iPhone, Android, smartphone, Fire tablet, whatever you use to stay up to date, plug it in tonight, let it be fully charged, and make sure you have a way to get access to the internet. If it's cellular or Wi-Fi, I have a backup for my Wi-Fi router at home, which keeps me on Wi-Fi for a couple hours after a power outage. So that will certainly help tomorrow. And grab our app because you're likely going to need it. So let's break down the timing here. Here's overnight hours. Yeah, scattered showers. One thing I want to note here is look at the rain that persists in the mountains for a while there. So that's where the heavy rain is. But I'm going to stop this right around 6 a.m. because this is where we start to see some winds pick up. And initially the winds tonight through tomorrow morning are going to be right out of the south. So really strong southerly winds, really warm, muggy feeling. It feels like summer out there right now, actually. So this is a really muggy setup. As we get into tomorrow morning, and you can see the Zeta's remnants moving into the mountains here, you can actually see some of the bands wrapping around like this. So the winds will start to come out of the southeast, so really strong southeasterly winds. And embedded in these heavier rain bands, that's where you'll see the strongest winds, because these winds will start to get off the surface a little bit. Because remember, friction slows down the wind near the surface, but it's still very strong above our heads. And if you get heavy downpours, it brings some of that heavy wind, or strong winds, I should say, down to the surface. So this is 9 a.m. We'll go to 10 a.m. and look at these lines. These are basically the outer bands of a tropical system. You can see them wrapping around. These are like feeder bands. So the low itself, or the tropical storm, is over here. These are strong winds. So embedded in those lines, we're going to see very strong winds and maybe an isolated tornado. I wouldn't rule it out, but the winds are probably the bigger threat overall. Anytime you have a tropical system like this, you tend to have at least a few tornadoes on the east side of it. We go towards the middle of the day, and look at that. The heaviest stuff starts to move out. This is why I said as fast as it's moving, that's bad news for wind, but it's also good news. It's in and out of here really, really quickly. We go into the afternoon hours. Now the cold front hasn't moved through yet. We could jump up to 80 degrees here, and then look what happens by evening. There's a little cluster of storms that comes through right around 8 o'clock. Now this is the actual cold front, which is being pulled through behind Zeta. So the cold front is trailing way behind. That front moves through, and then everything clears out, and it actually gets really cold. The winds start coming out of the northwest now, so the winds will start coming out of this direction. They'll still be breezy, nothing like we're going to see early in the day, and then everything kind of pushes out of here real quickly. So let me show you the threats overall. I like showing these one at a time. So this is the tornado threat for tomorrow. Low end risk, and you can see where I've highlighted here. Everywhere I've highlighted in yellow has an isolated threat, 1 to 2 weak tornadoes possible. We're not in the medium or high risk. This is actually a pretty low risk for some of the tropical systems we see. So overall, this threat is very low right now. Let's look at the wind threat next. The wind threat to me is our biggest threat. And you can see I have the core of the strongest winds moving right across the Piedmont with maybe 30 to 40 mile per hour sustained winds with gusts of 50 or higher. And I say 50 or higher, I'm not going to be shocked if we see gusts to 60 or 70 briefly in some locations in that area in red. And then the area in orange, pretty much the whole area, those are sustained winds to 35 and gusts to 45. And then as you get outside that area, the gusts are only to 40 and the sustained are much lower. Now let's talk about the rainfall. There is going to be rainfall, but it's going to be incredibly isolated. And the areas we're watching are the southeast facing slopes, because the wind is going to be coming in like that. And as that tropical moisture interacts with the Blue Ridge Mountains, especially the east and southeastern facing slopes, we see huge jumps in rainfall. So that's where you're going to see the highest rainfall. And just to show you the rainfall amounts, you can see who's going to get dumped on and who isn't. We'll go all the way into Friday morning, and you can see heavy rain in the mountains, but really 1 to 3 inches, that's not that bad. And then look at these amounts. These amounts aren't horrible, but it's enough rain that it saturates the soil, and then you throw in the wind, and you have problems. So you want to see the number one issue tomorrow? It's the wind. And I've shown this several times, and I'm going to update this every hour. I get new data in. These are the winds and why I'm so concerned about power outages, because here's our southeast winds tonight. This is 9 p.m. We'll go to about midnight. The winds start picking up a little bit. And again, I will tell you, first and foremost, this graphic right here is wind gust. So let me take this full screen. So these are futurecast wind gusts, not sustained. So I want to show you the worst gust we will see by hour. Sustained, you can probably cut these in a third or so, maybe even half. Just to set that up, I want to be totally transparent that we're not talking about sustained winds this strong, but gust to this length, this height. So we'll go towards 6 a.m. So notice we've got gusts to 25. Okay, but look what's coming up I-85 here into Greer. Big batch of strong winds. And again, look at this. By 9 a.m., we've got some gusts to 60 in Shelby, gusting to over 50 in Lincolnton, Gastonia, Rock Hill, and Chester. And notice some of the ridge tops in the mountains. Man, some of these ridge tops, this is where we're going to get some crazy wind report, like Grandfather Mountain, Klingman's Dome, Mount LeConte, Roan Mountain. One of those mountains is going to hit the wind just right, and we're going to get 100, 110 mile an hour wind gusts. I mean, I think Grandfather Mountain will easily be over 100, and maybe even Mount Mitchell. But you can see down in the Piedmont, look at these strong winds. By 10 a.m., we've got gusts to near 60 in Charlotte. All right, folks in Charlotte that are watching me right now, you know we've got big old trees, and even sometimes on a breezy day, we lose a couple trees. I'm talking to you, Myers Park, Dilworth, Plaza, South Charlotte, big trees, old oaks. There's gonna be some trees coming down. It's just, we know that's gonna happen. But the winds only stay high until about right here, 1 o'clock. They start shifting towards Greensboro, Raleigh. So you folks up in the Triad and Triangle, your worst weather is probably going to be right around lunchtime, and then going into mid-afternoon. But then when we go into evening, the cold front's not quite here yet. I want you to watch the wind direction. So right now the winds are coming out of the southwest here, but the cold front is going to be coming in from the west here shortly. And watch how the winds change direction as the cold front sweeps in right about here. They start swinging around to the west-northwest, and they're pretty windy in the mountains here as well behind the front. That's that cold air advection. And then by 10 a.m. Friday, we've got winds straight out of the northwest, gusting to 10 to 15, but then they really calm down going into Friday, and it really starts to dry out. So that's when we're going to see probably the calmest winds over the next 24 hours is really going into Friday morning. So again, tropical storm warning up. We've got a flash flood watch for the mountains, and this is all going to follow in a very narrow corridor tomorrow morning. Now what I'm looking for here is, I'm trying to talk to you, I'm looking for a graphic that has the timing of all this, and I don't know what happened to it. I was actually going to show you that, but I don't know where it went. Well, while I'm looking for it, I will show you real quickly the flash flood watch, which is in effect tomorrow as well, and this is into afternoon. So you can see most of northern Georgia, eastern Tennessee. Actually, the heaviest rain will be back to the west, but you can see the counties shaded in green there. That's where we have the flash flood watch. And again, this is, even though this is a flash flood watch, the overall rain threat is pretty low because of how fast the system is moving. If we had this thing, coming through over a day or so, we probably would have much bigger issues. So this was the graphic I was trying to show you, because I think it breaks everything down into a nice simple graphic. Tornado risk is low, but it's going to peak in the morning. Power outages, probably a pretty high risk of that, and that peaks between 9 a.m. and about 1 p.m. Damaging winds also in that same time frame, and flooding mainly in the morning with that heavy batch of rain, and that's confined mainly to the mountain areas where we're going to see that flooding. So again, let's go back to the radar. Here we are watching this thing just continue to pick up speed. It's part of a larger system. You can see the cold air back to the west. This is the cold air, and this is actually the cold front here. So this comes through first tomorrow, and then the cold front follows through. But you can see behind here we don't have a whole lot. As far as severe weather threat tomorrow, there is always a low end risk for tornadoes in these tropical systems. Tonight that risk is much higher in the Gulf Coast, but you can see tomorrow everything in yellow is under the low threat, or low risk I should say, for an isolated tornado. And I really think for most of our tropical systems, this is actually a pretty low risk. We had much bigger threats with Delta and some of our other systems that made landfall. Seems like we've been hit by every single one. But the flash flood guidance shows you, back into Tennessee and the mountains of North Carolina and northern Georgia tonight and tomorrow. That's where that risk is going to be high. So of course, we'll have an update every hour. We'll have another update at 10 o'clock. I will post it online. And of course, at 11 o'clock, we'll get a whole new track update as well, which will probably let us time this out. So my word to you tonight is charge everything up. I hate making decisions for people. People ask me about schools and everything else. Most schools are virtual or can go virtual. If you can do that, great. The one thing I would caution you, trees. This is all about trees coming down. So if you have big trees in your yard, maybe on one side of the house, you maybe want to stay towards the other side of the house tomorrow morning. If you got a car parked underneath that tree, maybe park it somewhere else. Just think about that. Anything that can fly and be debris in your yard, like lawn furniture, our portable basketball hoop, I'm definitely going to put that down tonight because we had a near miss with a storm last year where that thing fell over and almost hit the car. So stuff like that. Think about that, what you can do tonight or first thing in the morning before these strong winds come in. And the good news is it's a very narrow window tomorrow, just in the morning, then it's done. So if you can make it through the morning with no issues, we should be fine. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And of course, I'll try to go back and answer some questions. And one thing I'll tell you, if you follow me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or here at WCNC, I post a ton of stuff on my pages. If you're just following your news feed on any of these social media sources, you're only getting about 10% of what I'm posting. So if you see something, you have a question, go right to my page and see if there's a map or something that can help you there, because there's a lot of information I posted on my Facebook page and my Twitter feed that can help you out and plan for tomorrow. I try to answer as many questions as I can, but obviously in situations like this, it becomes difficult to answer everybody. So I try to put out as much information as possible to hopefully kind of preempt those questions and answer them ahead of time. But if you have a specific question, shoot them at me and I'll try to answer as many as I can. Have a great night, everybody. And if you're up late, tune in at 11 o'clock. I'll have a complete update on that track and any changes to the guidance as far as wind speeds are concerned.